So if there's anybody that has an issue with being recorded, then please feel free to hop off, and we will post this to the Tune In Tuesday icon on PCIN. But I'm very excited to introduce to you a very special person. This is Dr. Liz Rook. She is the owner and founder of Thrive Arena Life Coaching. And she's also an active treating rheumatology physician here in Grand Junction. She teaches mindset and strategy skills and blends them both up to unlock joy. And she truly brings kind of that joy right into everything that she does. She's just such a wonderful person. She truly believes that we all have untapped wisdom within ourselves that is kind of harvested through our experiences. She likes to compare herself to a peppy and deeply compassionate personal trainer, which I can totally agree with, but for thoughts, habits, and emotions. Her passion for this comes out of 30 plus years of overeating and avoiding conflict to cope with worry, anxiety, and her prior persona, she would define it as a type A perfectionistic people pleaser. So she now leads and coaches boldly and imperfectly, encouraging joy and humor along the way. She grew up on the East Coast and was a competitive gymnast all throughout college, which reminds me, next time I see you, Liz, I'm gonna have to ask for see some skills, because I didn't know this about you. In her spare time, she enjoys reading, baking, crossfitting, snowboarding, jogging, hiking, and adventuring outdoors with her hunky husband and inquisitive dog Buttercup. And that's her definition. Her husband is a little hunky, but that's her definition. So welcome, Liz. We're excited to have you.
Well, thanks, Lindsay. I'm super excited to be here. You want me to just take it away?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. So hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. And I was stoked when Lindsay asked me to come talk a little bit about ways we can decrease stress, because no one has any stress in their life, none at work, none at home, no struggles with balance, right? Everyone's cool. Stress level 0. Yeah.
Nothing.
So because stress seems inescapable and our brains are, old animal brains evolved from being basically like stress response, rest response. That was like our basic, it's on or it's off. That's how we evolved. And now we are wonderfully evolved humans, most of us, and we can use our reasoning and intelligence and rationale to respond to things instead of reacting to them from that stress or rest response. But I'm going to talk about a little bit about brain function and the neuroscience behind it. But I want you to just, for the purposes of this talk, give yourself a stress level rating on a 0 being no stress to 10 being like, oh my gosh, my head's going to pop off if one other person asks me for something today. So I just want you to kind of either mentally think about where your stress level is right now. And you can jot it down if you want, because our brains like to forget conveniently, of course. And we're just going to revisit this at the end of the talk. So Lindsay, if I forget, just remind me that we're going to do a stress level at the end. And I'm curious to see, what this talk, how it impacts you, because my goal is for all of you that are listening to have at least a 50% stress reduction by the end of this call. And if that seems outrageous or unsustainable, change can happen quickly, but only if we're open to it. So I also want to just encourage you that, like, if I assume you're here because you want techniques to reduce stress and you want to be able to move through your workday and your work home transition and even your home life with more ease, with more balance, with less conflict, with less congestion, with less of that like all or nothing, I've got to get it all done or I suck kind of mentality, which is how I define perfectionism. So I want to give you some quick, easy ways to become aware when you're feeling stressed, to process through it acutely, which also keeps your stress from becoming from acute to chronic, which the chronic stress is where we have increased mental health issues, depression, anxiety, difficulty coping. We revert to kind of childhood coping skills, and we're going to talk about the stress response briefly, but also so that you can be healthier and happier and keep your joy. Because to me, the opposite of stress is joy. And at baseline, I truly believe on the inside, and I'm a very scientific clinical person, and I'm always like, ugh, feelings. But honestly, we have love, we have joy, we have this inner spark inside of us. And then it just kind of, when we're babies, it's just out there hanging out. And then it just kind of gets covered up with all the dirt and poop of the world around us. And so we have to kind of dig it back out. So that's what we do with these stress reduction techniques. So how I see stress is kind of a resistance. It's a resistance to what's going on around us and outside of us, and also sometimes inside of us. If we're feeling an emotion that's uncomfortable, we'll resist it. If someone says something and we disagree, we'll resist it, either actively or passively. If something's happening, at work or at home and it's not meeting our expectations, we tend to resist it. And you can kind of feel this when you feel defensive, or you want to just react really quickly, or just kind of like mentally throw your hands up, or even physically throw your hands up. So our power and our control is in how we're seeing and experiencing what's going on both around us and inside of us. And that's where this tool that I'm going to teach you is very powerful, because it allows you to slow down. And the more you do this, the quicker it gets. Usually I can do it in about 10 seconds now, but I've also been practicing it for quite a while. So when you start, just like with learning how to drive, when we all learned how to drive, we felt a little clunky, a little uncomfortable, a little awkward. And now we can usually get from point A to point B without really consciously realizing we were doing it. Same thing with this. The more we practice, the more we progress, and the more it becomes our default. So we want to be able to experience what's going on, and also not be in the moment necessarily when we're having an acute stress response. So I want you to be able to recognize when you're going into a sympathetic stress response. So central nervous system is kind of that primitive brain. It's the amygdala is kind of back here in the inside. And that's why I point to the back of my head, just because crude diagram. And I'm not a good artist, so you're welcome that you didn't get pictures today. That our animal brain, our primitive brain, goes into fight or flight. Those are the two most common stress responses we kind of think of with a sympathetic stress response. So we're ready to run away from the threat. We're ready to fight back against the threat. But the other two common stress responses, especially for women, especially in professional setting, is freeze, where we just kind of freeze like the deer in the headlight. Like, if I don't do anything, it'll go away eventually and wander off. Or fawning, which is people pleasing, which one of my go-to stress responses for a long time, because if everyone around me is okay, then it's safe for me, which is a normal kind of learned response in our society, but it's also not always the most helpful. So I'm going to teach you a technique called PAL, and I call it being a pal to yourself. And PAL is an acronym, because who loves a good acronym? I do. Pause, ask, and listen. And it's really 3 steps when you're feeling that kind of fight or flight stress response. And then we're going to talk about how to shift out of the acute stress response to the rest and digest, and why this is important, that we regulate our nervous system when we go into that acute stress response with the activation of our sympathetic stress response, is we decrease our parasympathetic response, and we lose access to our rational, intelligent, lovely human brain that can make reasonable decisions and respond versus react. Because when we're reacting from our sympathetic kind of intelligent brain goes offline, when our emotions are high, our reasoning is low, and that's when we tend to like explode in anger. We snap at our kids, we yell at our spouse, we yell at our boss, we yell at our subordinates. If you're having any kind of reaction that later on you're like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done that, and it's not giving you a net positive effect, it's not something that's helpful in moving you forward in the direction you want to go, like resolving a conflict, if you're creating more conflict instead of resolving it, if you're avoiding something, a difficult conversation, avoiding a task that is going to be a little tricky or a little slippery. So this is where this PAL tool comes in, and then we can shift from that sympathetic, like freeze or fawn response, into more of a rest and digest, so we can tap into our calm, rational brain and respond instead of react. Everybody with me so far? Anybody have any questions? And you can throw them in the chat, and Lindsay, you can let me know if anyone has any questions as we go. I'm happy. This is going to be like a faster paced talk, and like Lindsay and I were talking before, I'm a very energetic person at baseline, so I know everyone, usually when I picture someone who's talking about stress reduction, they're like, oh, you're zen and you've just done an hour of yoga. No, I'm type A. Let's go. High vibe, high personality. And you can keep your authenticity and be calm at the same time. And that brings out more of your good qualities. And we always think if we're going to like dull ourselves. PAL is pause, ask, and listen. So good question. So how we do this. So when we pause, we want to pause and come back into the present moment. And we're talking about using this PAL tool when we're having a reaction, when we're feeling ourselves being stressed. And this is also a good time to kind of do some self-reflection. And I always recommend like write down on a Post-it note so you have something to take with you, because the more we write things down for our brain to see them, the easier it is to practice and implement. Is what does your body feel like when you're feeling stressed? For me, I get like overwhelmed and I feel really tight and tense, and my brain just starts spinning and I'm just like, oh. And that's kind of how I know I'm in a stress response, is I either want to run away or I want to like just make sure everyone else is okay, or I really need to step back. Right, feeling super tight and super tense. And feel free to kind of share in the comments if you'd like, in the chat. But just knowing what your stress response feels like, and it might be different in different situations. Like when I'm feeling stressed, but like a little worried or anxious, I kind of get like almost like a rumbling in my belly, which for a long time I thought was hunger. And then I kept feeding it, and lo and behold, it was not, it was stress. So in different situations, your body may respond a little bit differently. Very high stress, very acute stress, like a car accident. You know, if you're like have a near miss with a car accident and your heart's like pounding and your head starts, you know, feeling really tight or tense. Some people get headaches, some people get stomach aches, other people just feel really fatigued. And when I have an acute stress response, I tend to feel really drained of energy all of a sudden. And I know it's a stress response when I can kind of come out of it, and then my energy kind of love to eat, especially sugar, because it's delicious. That's my go-to for stress. And I've learned to recondition that response and give myself that comfort that I want, that the food is, you know, I think the food is giving me, but it's really just kind of helping me ignore it. So knowing how your body, how to pause, ask, and listen. So we first, when we feel that trigger, we want to just slow down real quick and pause, and just in your head, just or mentally, some people find it helpful to write it down as they go until they get real good at it. And then you can kind of mentally think about it, because our brains like to get distracted too. Like we'll start doing it and someone will come in and ask us a question, or someone will give us a call, or an email will pop up and we get distracted and we never finish and complete the stress cycle, which we're going to kind of touch on is important to keeping the acute stress from becoming chronic. So we pause with presence, we slow down, we come back into where we are right now. Even if it's with someone else, you can do this mentally and just say, I'm feeling stressed. And we just pause with presence and we notice that our body is feeling stressed. And so that's the first, that's the P in PAL. We're pausing with presence, and we're noticing and being aware that we're feeling stressed. Second, we're going to ask, and you want to ask a curious question. And this takes us out of self-criticism and self-judgment by being open to being curious of what's going on right now. And we don't have to overthink this, because my brain loves to overthink everything. Well, this, and this, and then you go off on a tangent and you never come back. Right? We're doing something new, so it's going to be uncomfortable, and your brain will actually fight you and try to distract you, because it's going to take a little bit more energy and effort the first few times you do it. So that's why intentionally we want to slow down and pause, and then we're going to ask the curious question. What's going on right now? What am I feeling stressed about? Why am I feeling stressed? And these are all, you know, you can ask any number of questions. I want you to come up with like 2 or 3 that will be most helpful for you when you feel that acute stress. You know, you could even ask specific, am I feeling stressed because my husband said, you know, I'm not present enough with him when I'm trying to get the kids ready for school? You know, am I feeling stressed because my boss just gave me another 5 deadlines and they're all in the next week and I have all this other stuff to do already? Am I feeling stressed because I just physically don't feel well right now and that person's request just sent me over the edge? Right? So just kind of simplify it for your brain by asking a curious question. And curiosity, I just want to offer, is the opposite of judgment. And I know, especially as women, a lot of times we tend to personalize, and we're our own worst critic. So if you're getting, this works if you're getting into a judgmental space in your brain and you're like, I should have done that better, I should have known better, I should have had this, figured out by now, I shouldn't have to ask for help. If you start noticing you're shoulding all over yourself, this is a great time to pause and be your own best pal and ask the curious question, like, am I expecting something, maybe some perfectionism or some people pleasing sneaking in there? And then third is L, you want to listen and learn. So this is where our power comes in, because anytime we're feeling stressed, we're resisting something. And we don't have to just be like, oh, forget it, like I'm wrong, you're right, that's how I'm going to diffuse my stress. No, not that at all. We want to notice when our perspective is unhelpful. We're thinking we're upset because our boss gave us a deadline, but we're actually thinking something that's causing us to feel stressed or feeling resistant, like I'm never going to be able to get this done. And that causes that stress. So we want to like break it down and really learn where we have this repetitive habit of thinking that is causing us to feel stressed. And it's not, and that's why I say with curiosity and listen. And when we're looking to learn from what we're asking, we're not judging, we're not criticizing, we're not blowing ourselves off in the process. And so this tool is an easy way for you to be able to really quickly break it down and tap back in to what's acutely going on and learn something, and then be able to shift from reacting in the moment to responding in a way that's helpful for your situation and honors you and your values and uses your beautiful, intelligent brain that you all do great work with, instead of reacting from that animalistic, like I gotta fight or flight or freeze or fawn to get my way out of this. And so I'm going to teach you a couple of quick techniques, and they don't all work for everyone. But the next step is to, after you've kind of you were your best pal, pause with presence, ask curious questions, and then listen and learn. You sometimes can't access that learning until you calm your body and your brain down. And some of us can start in the body. That's what these techniques are good for, but they incorporate the body and the mind to shift you from that sympathetic fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response back to your parasympathetics, where you can access your rational, intelligent, beautiful, reasonable brain that's going to give you better information and offer better solutions that are going to be more helpful for you in the long run. And then you can complete your stress cycle. And what that looks like is, if you've ever watched Discovery Channel or like Animal Planet, there's a, a snake that's stalking a little rat, desert rat, I guess. I don't have good examples, I'm sorry. I should have thought about this ahead of time. There's a snake and it's stalking a desert rat, and the snake strikes and the desert rat escapes and it runs away, and you follow the desert rat, and the guy's voice is always like, the desert rat learns to run another day and this will repeat again and again. But they follow the little rat, and the rat will like go and hide, make sure it's safe, and then it shakes its body out. It's completing its stress response. So physically moving your body is helpful after you've had an acute stress where you're feeling stressed. Even just like shaking your hands out, shaking your legs out, rolling your shoulders, dancing around. I like to do dances. After I give talks, I'll probably hang up with y'all and like do a little dance to celebrate, and as well as to, unload the stress, rolling your neck out, or just, shaking, jumping up and down, going for a walk, rolling your ankles around under your desk if you're in a meeting and you can't dance around like a fool. I'm sure in Pickett County, they all let you dance around all the time though, right, Lindsay? Okay, that's what I thought. So reconnecting the mind and the body to physically let go of that stress response. Okay, here's the fun part. Any questions or comments before we go on to going from acute sympathetic fight, flight, freeze, or fawn to focusing back to the parasympathetic to access your calm? I'm just going to pause for about 10 seconds. which feels incredibly long when you're doing it. Didn't that feel like forever? Like super awkward? I love that. The first few times I did it, it was super awkward. Now I'm just like, oh, this is awesome. All right, so one of the things you probably already did while we were pausing, and these are your smashing stress tools to go again from that sympathetic acute response to reaccessing your reasonable brain and your parasympathetics, which are your rest and digest, which balance out your nervous system response. And this is important because it helps to calm your body and your brain so you can respond either before or after using that PAL tool. So the first tool is to inhale and then exhale for twice as long. So just in and then. So if you inhale for 2 seconds, you exhale for 4. You don't have to get super detailed with it because trust me, my type A brain's like, well, how many seconds and how long do I have to do it? And what if I pass out in the middle? Just tell your brain it's okay. We're just breathing. We're just doing it a little bit differently. So when you inhale and exhale for twice as long, it taps back into that parasympathetics. And additionally, if you breathe in through your nose, and I apologize if your allergies are kicking it right now or you have a cold, and then out through your mouth, that also helps you balance out that stress response and shift from sympathetic to parasympathetic. So I call that one, but technically it's 2. So even breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth, even if you physically, for some reason, can't do that prolonged exhale, that's okay. And anywhere between 3 to 5 breaths like that is a great way. And you can do it quietly. You can do it, you know, if you're in a meeting and you're feeling your temperature rising and you're getting frustrated, that's a great time to practice that. And somebody looks at you, you just be like, I'm just breathing, man. No worries. Okay. The next technique, so that's one technique. Next technique I'm going to teach you is most of us have pens or something else at our disposal. And I'm going to step back, just let me know if you can't hear. Is if you're feeling real stressed or triggered, you grab an object and you put it in one hand and then you just cross it across your body. So if you can grab something right now and do this with me. And what this does is when we're acutely stressed, it deactivates one side of our brain. And what we're doing when we're passing an object back and forth is we're reactivating the other side to balance it out so that both sides of our brain are at the party now. And this works if you're feeling really anxious, worried, really stressed, really any emotion that's really got you, you know, kind of narrow focused in where those sympathetics are activated. You can use this to diffuse, and usually 30 seconds to a minute. And this is similar to like EMDR in therapy where you're accessing the rapid eye movements, and it's more for the cross-body technique. So both hemispheres of your brain are coming on board. And that is a good way to kind of let go of some of that stress and come back to the parasympathetic response. Another one that you can do pretty easily, especially like in a meeting, it's gonna be hard for me to demonstrate, but I want y'all to try it, is pick an object that's maybe like 5 or so feet away and focus on it. And when we're in our sympathetic stress response, we narrow our vision to be very focused and acutely aware and alert, right? So if you see a bear in the woods, you're really focused on the bear. You're not caring so much what's going on right around the bear, right? Right, that's our stress response. We're focused on the threat. And so what you do is you focus on the object, and then you let your vision, you stay focused with your eyes, and then you let your vision expand to the periphery. So I'm focused on, you know, a hook in my office because I'm in an old hospital room is where my office is. And I'm letting my vision expand and see up, but not with my direct vision, with my indirect vision, and then expand out. And then challenge myself. Can I see behind myself at all? Can I see above? And just playing with it. How far down can I see underneath me? And sometimes I'll kind of move my hands around the periphery to see, can I see my hands now? Can I pull them back? And doing this technique, and then you can focus back in on the object and then release. This will help you access that parasympathetic tone to decrease that sympathetic response and put it back into balance so that you can access that calm, rational reasoning brain. So those are 3 techniques. There's probably 10, 15 out there. EFT, if any of you have ever heard of that, the emotional freedom technique, or tapping, where you tap certain spots and release stress, that's helpful. Any kind of deep breathing. But these are 3 techniques, and you can play with all of these, but I'd like you to pick one to try to practice for the next week or so. And then if that one's not doing it for you, or you're like, yeah, it's a little bit, but not great, you can play around with how long you do it for. Some people do these for like 3 to 5 minutes if you have that luxury. When I'm at work and I'm getting a little frustrated, I usually have 30 seconds to a minute. So I will pick a pen up and just kind of pass it back and forth while I'm doing other stuff. I like the breathing because it helps you come back into your body. And I can give Lindsay a list of other techniques that she can post with the video. But you can also Google like increasing vagal tone or increasing parasympathetics to decrease that sympathetic response. So those were the techniques that I wanted to share with you, as well as the PAL tool. I'm going to pause here and ask curiously any questions, any concerns, any clarifications that you want before we wrap up. All right, so I'm going to ask what your stress level is now and how it's changed and how much improvement you've had. And if you want to share that in the chat. And you can't offend me. So if you're like, nope, none of it, that's fine too. And I'll pray for you. No, I'm just kidding. So, and a lot of these techniques we want to, practice regularly. Like I said, they get easier as you go, and they get quicker to access the more you practice them. And another thing I want to offer with any kind of stress reduction, a lot of times it's like when you start working out, you're like, I gotta go start working out before I join a gym, because otherwise people are gonna know that I haven't been working out, and you have all this kind of like, you have additional stress that you need to be doing it right or perfectly. I want to offer that we always start where we are, and knowing where you're starting is helpful, but it's also not helpful if you're judging yourself where you are. So you want to start where you are. And then I want to offer that every small step adds up. We all climb a mountain one step at a time. And we sometimes have to take that first 1 or 5 or 10 or 50 uncomfortable steps before we get into our rhythm. And I just want to share, if y'all didn't know, Lindsay's a runner, and she had me sign up for half marathon with her. And then she wasn't able to make it last weekend. So I ran it in her honor without her. And the first 4 miles or so, I was like, I'm not going to make it. I'm not going to be able to do this, even though I've been training. And then after a while, my body kind of got in a rhythm and my brain calmed down, and we finished, and we actually PR'd. So that was in Lindsay's honor. So yes, so people are finding a little bit of stress reduction. Feeling stressed because you have more to learn, I get that totally. And I want to offer that's probably perfectionism. And you can't do this wrong. So anytime you're able to slow down and just create awareness, it creates space for you, which inherently decreases that stress. So I want to thank you all for letting me talk today. I'm going to open it up to any questions or anything else you might want to learn. All right.
I don't hear. Yeah, I was gonna say, since I don't hear any questions, I want to thank you, Liz. You're always such a pleasure to listen to. I think that learning the science behind like these stress responses is so key to understanding like that, it's just part of our anatomy that is making us react this way, and having some tools that are really tangible and easy to do, I think they're just fantastic. So I appreciate you and your knowledge and your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I want to thank you all for coming today. Thank you for participating in your own health. And long-term reducing chronic stress really improves health, it improves balance, it improves your thriving and just your enjoyment of life. And I do want to say as well, and I talk to this with my clients and my patients all the time, anytime your brain starts wigging out or is going into a stress response, you get to say normal human brain. Brain's always gonna brain, and the more we're aware of them, the more we can redirect them and use them for good and not evil. So thank you all for letting me be here today.